Okay. Well, let's talk about APIs. Just a brief introductions about APIs, that's the entire thing. So, quick. I called it a roadmap. I didn't want to just call it schedule. So, welcome. And I'm going to go who we are, what I'm talking about, and then what's next for this series of talks. So, I'm supposed to talk. We have our sponsor. We have Salon Build, and they are our sponsors. Salon Build is a consulting firm specializing in delivering custom built technology solutions as a service. And yeah, literally what's on the page. They are hiring more folks, and if you're interested, you can look at their website or you can talk to Sven, and he will be happy to help you figure that out. Um, and then who we are. Well, I'm David. That's my picture on the left. Karen is not here, and we have Sven. Sven's on the call.
Yes, I'm a principal in Asylum Build. About over 20 years of experience. Started out as a developer, but kind of made my way into the on the light side. So and here I am.
And I'm David. So I've been a developer, then I went to testing, then back to development, now back in testing. That's been my hopping back and forth career for the past 15 years now, almost. And yeah, staying in testing. I love testing. It's more fun for me. It's also a little bit easier for me. So that's what I do. And I just also enjoy it, which means Karen's here, so she gets to do an introduction on herself. Go! Unless her mic is not on. No, her mic's not on.
So I'll be chewing some food, maybe.
Yep. You get to introduce Karen then. No?
Karlin is also working for Asylum Build. She's also a principal over there. She has a lot of experience with very large clients, and she enjoys security, I know, and she also does back-end and front-end testing, but mainly as a principal, kind of leading large projects, the client conversations, and the implementation of test frameworks and strategies.
So what is an API? API stands for Application Programming Interface, or as I like to think of it, the internet, because the internet runs entirely off APIs. Every single web page you load is often a GET call that's being loaded. Every time you send data as a POST call. Everything going across the internet, for the most part, is an API call. So then, whoops, I did go that fast. And most of this calls over the internet or over REST APIs, which stand for, please don't ask me why they do it this way, but representational. They did two words and decided to take the R and the E from it. State transfer. So that is a REST API, which are going to be the common ones you'll see of a GET call, POST calls, PUT calls, patches calls, and just really whatever calls people feel like sending. The most common one is the GET call. Here's an example. If you were to hit this URL right now, you would see some sort of data come back. Yeah. So in this case here, we're hitting dogapi.dog. We're asking the API website for some facts, and it sends back some data in the form of a JSON, which is saying, wow, check out those choppers. Puppies have 28 teeth and normal adult dogs have 42. Very random fact. So breaking down the types of calls, just going a bit further, the GET call, the way I like to think of it is give me data. It's basically, I'm not interacting with your data, I just need you to send me data. Send me as much data as I keep asking for. Post calls, I want to tell the server, hey, I want to tell you about something and I want you to save it. That's the way I like to think of it. So I'm going to send you all this new data and you get to remember it. Put calls, let me update your data. So think of it, let's say, you go into a web page, you modify your user profile and say, hey, I changed my email. Let me give you the new one. That's often a put call. And so as a result, your data is ready in the system. It just has to update the data. And then the last call, deleting. You send it over and you say, please forget about me. It's like, that's what we put it under in general. It's like to delete an entire record at one time It's not to like just clear one field. It's meant to like delete your entire user account, for example. That's when you'll see delete calls a lot more. Another type of things you might have heard is GraphQL. So we have the REST APIs that most people use, and then we have the GraphQL. It's very different. You don't have the gets, the push, the puts, and the delete calls broken down. Instead, everything comes across just as a post. And then you start sending out lots and lots of information, trying to get a fine detail on like what kind of information you want back. So like an example would be here, you actually said, I want to query your human section. I want to give it an ID number, and I want to get the name and the height for it. And then the data that comes back from the GraphQL would actually come back something like this and say, hey, you asked for human 1000, the name on it is Luke Skywalker, and the height's 1.72 meters. Well, 1.72. So it'd be that sort of thing. You got to specify it, but then you get results back. But the plus side is you only have to do a post call. You don't have to worry about the gets, the puts, and the deletes. Next off, a little bit more on it is handshakes, or talking just security in general, authorizations. So whenever you make a call, there's a couple possible ways that it's going to know who you are and trust you enough to send it back. The first one is nothing. It just automatically goes, if you found me at this URL, I trust you. I will send you back all the data to anyone. The next one we have is usernames and passwords. You send over your username and your password, or maybe your email, your password, or such, and it will say, okay, let me check the database and go, yep, you're real, you're in the system. I will send you back whatever information you asked for. The next one that you're going to see is tokens. So it goes in on your website normally. It says, hey, remember this token for any of your APIs calls? So you have to send it over, and it's basically your custom token. And it says, this is my token. No one else should have it. So therefore, if I send it over, you know it's me. And so it connects on the back and goes, yep, I have your token. You're therefore this user. So I will send you back that information. And tokens have a little bit subcategory, is what I like to think of it, but you see a lot more of odd bearer tokens. They are really, really long. So normally, like a token could be that short string, 16 characters. Bearer tokens, you'll see like this, like what, 128 plus characters. And the only way you know they're a bearer token often, they contain the word bearer at the front. But they will just be a really long string, and the odds of someone randomly typing it is way, way less. So let's talk a bit further on the types of APIs. So whenever you make an API call, it's always going to send back a couple bits of data. One of them is going to send back is a status code. And the status codes are meant to be a shorthand way for you to figure out what is happening. So couple common numbers. You got 101, 200, 201, 202, 308, 404, 530, 999. Yes, a bunch of these numbers you probably don't know what they mean. I don't remember them either. I, for the most part, just remember only a couple of the 200s and 400s. But there's a reason for that. The reason being, often there's a catch-all. So a lot of APIs will always have an API catch-all, and they'll just say, hey, I don't recognize you. You punched in a random gibberish string, so therefore I will send back and let you know that that URL doesn't exist. I also tell folks, when you're doing testing, don't always look at the numbers. And the reason I say that is because, whoops, I did this out of order. The users set them themselves. Whatever developer sets is what it comes back on. So you could have a valid connection coming across, and someone will be really goofy and say, hey, it's a real connection. I trust you. It's totally fine. Here's your data. By the way, I'm going to give you also a status code 999 in it. That's not the right way to do it. So if you're just using websites and you get status codes coming back, you can read them, but take them with a grain of salt. They're not real. But if you know the developer who's making them, then that makes it a lot easier for you. And then you can actually confirm to the developer, hey, that's the status codes I intended to go by, and this is what the information comes back. So you have a better idea. So like, let's talk about a couple of the common status codes. The 200s. The 200, one of the most common status code, it just says, hey, I got you. I trust you. Here's everything's fine. Everything's dandy. Just like a dog wandering through the grass and happy to see its owner. Everything is doing fine. And then you got the other common status code with a lot of people see, the 404. I'm trying to find something. This URL that you're looking for doesn't exist. I'm sorry, it's not there. What you're looking for does not exist at that location. Just like the dog trying to find its bone where it buried and it can't find it. So that's a bit about APIs and their status codes. So next question is, can we test them? Yes, we can. We can test them in so many ways. The most common way, open up the browser, try to navigate to it. Next off, if you're trying to do custom stuff, I personally love Postman, but there were a lot of other tools out there for just trying to craft things. And then can we test it with code? Because no one wants to sit there and always having to check things nonstop. And the answer is, yeah, we can. Pick your language, by all means. Whatever language you can write code in, you can also do API calls and verify things that way. So let me go a bit further with Postman. But I guess I should stop there first. If there's general questions on APIs or GraphQLs, I know it was a really rapid fire, a fire hose of data, but like I said, I just wanted to do a basic intro. So if there's questions, by all means, I can take some now. Otherwise, I'll just show some examples and how we manually test things.
Christian is typing something.
Yes. How popular is GraphQL? Okay. I'm a little bit biased. I actually like GraphQL, but that's because I'm always aware of how annoying it is when you're trying to collect data. It's like sometimes you have to make 5 different API calls to get all the information you need. So I like the idea of just doing one call, just having to put a ton of fields and arguments to request it. If I had to guess right now, though, maybe 1 in 5 would be a very generous estimate. Companies would use it, and part of it's the complexity. Most people, like you put a GraphQL call in front of people, most people aren't gonna have an easy time reading it, I'll say. Whereas you put the REST API, a lot of people won't read it so fast.
Yeah, that was my question as well around GraphQL. How do you know the schema that you, or how to submit data to the endpoint? Is there something like Swagger, or can it be used there?
They need a lot of documentation. If there is no documentation, you're trying to hit a GraphQL, you're in trouble as well. Say, it lets you hide things also. Like normally you see, like if they wrote a new API, they always have to say version 1, version 2, version 3 because you're adding more and more data coming back or new fields. For GraphQL, you don't have to do that. You can literally just like mention, oh yeah, there's a new field you can request when you make a query now to GraphQL. So it has its pros, but the complexity is really high, I feel. And I think a lot of companies look at it and go, it's not worth it. I mean, there are some that do it because they're just fire hosing all the data and they're trying to make it easier, but it's a complex challenge. Other questions? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Let's go through Postman for a little bit. So, wait, double checking. Can folks see my Postman?
Yes, we are.
Sweet. So, I'm gonna pull over this. See, not full screen. There you go. So, I have here a website. Here I'll post it in the chat if people want to see it. At the same time, this is a common thing you're gonna see. You're gonna see Swagger documentation made. You'll hear that term. Swagger is just like a very fast way for a company to tell anyone trying to track their API, hey, here's our API. Let me give you an idea on what kind of calls you can make, what kind of types of calls we accept, what kind of data you send, what responses you get back. So this website here is a free service. It's a very nice one. Oh yes, and that is Postman if you wish to try it out at the same time. Postman is what I'll be using for manual testing it. So an example of how to read the Swagger documentation here. you'll see something like this, and it's basically saying, hey, we have breeds as a API. We have here the server at the top, so that'll be the URL you have at the very front of every API call. And then after that, the slash breeds here is just saying, after that, put a slash breeds, and you can hit this call, or you can do slash facts, slash groups. But the thing is, it tells you right here on the left what kind of call it is: the get, the push, the put, delete. So that's an example. And so when you go down to Swagger documentation, it will tell you, hey, what stuff do you need to send over? In this case here, limits. If you want to say how many facts you want back at once, you can, and then it tells you, hey, this is what you should expect back. This is a 200 call you'll get back when it's doing it. It'll tell you, hey, description, hey, successful. It'll tell you what type of data it'll send back and give you an idea of like, this is what you can expect back. Many foot disorders in dogs are caused by long toenails. Cut the dog's toenails. So, little bits like that. So, I have here Postman. Postman's up. So, I'm just going to do a new one. So, Postman is set up here, and you can put in the URL, which I will do that first. That is the URL at the top. So, starting with the servers, https://dogapi.dog/API/v2. And after that, /facts. Make sure you set it on the get call. These are like the ones that they always say are common. The get, the post, the put, the patch, the delete. There's head, there's options, there's others. I don't know them all, but mainly just get, post, put, and delete. In fact, just get, post, and delete, I would say, are by far the three main ones you need to know. After that, hit send, and this is what it gives back. And it's right there just as raw data. Well, this is Postman has a pretty and a raw. Raw would be like this. This was what it would come back as. Pretty is tries to put it in a nice format array to make it easier for reading. So we can do that. There's another API like breeds. So we would just come back in, change facts to breeds, send it. And then it's like, yeah, we got all these. And then let's go further. As an example, it says no parameters. Oh, I can't change that. I want it to see. Let's change facts. Facts has one. So if I go back to facts, so right here we have the params example. Let's try it out. I want to change the limit. I want to get 5 facts. Hopefully this does it what I think it does. And it sends over fact 1, fact 2, fact 3, fact 4, fact 5. We got 5 facts. You can also see here in the URL, it stuck it on at the end. So anytime you see parameters being talked about in an API call, they're often stuck in the URL itself. You also have body that will sometimes be included, and there'll be a lot different stuff that we'll be putting in. But this is stuff that doesn't go in the URL. This is what gets sent. It's like the URL won't change. Like the URL is like the main information, and this will be a lot more customized. So like if you were doing a post call, you would have to include all the information in a body when it's being queried, for example. That's a little quick bit here on Postman. Another little thing you can always play with, and I like to point it out for Postman, is you can generate code for it really quickly. So you can click over here on the side, and you can just choose what language you want. So Java is always a fun one. Hey, this is how you do a Java call to that location. It will go to it, hit that URL, and send it over. You could do the same thing for PHP with a curl command. Inside PHP, you can see it's putting all the information. If you're using a terminal, just do the curl by itself. Here's a curl. And this is just like a quick way. You don't have to trust what Postman displays. They're making it easy for you to get it into your computer, whether it be scripting language or an actual coding language, just as a quick way to do it. You got the same for Python. If you're a Python user, we got Ruby. Just quick way to play with just generating APIs and then dropping into your code really fast. I mean, if you have your own frameworks after that, you're probably going to need to change it, but it like just as a quick scratch pad, if you need to hack something together in like 10 minutes, you can use it through here. Just a little bit. Postman. I don't know. Questions on Postman? We're playing around with it. Or just how I'm reading Swagger documentation and going into Postman.
Question,
Okay.
are you going to
Yeah.
show how you can write tests in Postman?
I wasn't going to. I
Right.
didn't know. I was walking the line. I would say if that should be something we should cover as a separate one, because you can go much further down that line, I feel, once you start trying to set up collections and automating all this stuff inside Postman. It's a lot longer of a talk.
Can you speak it towards the end, kind of how
Yep.
that would work, and then maybe talk a little bit about Newman as well?
I've
Or
not used
just
Newman.
mention Newman as a way to kind of run your test within the pipeline. That would be interesting for people to know, or we can just mention it later.
I'll let you mention it. I haven't used Newman before. Sorry. But yeah. So okay. It did it all the way there. So so this is going further. What's next? We're going to talk about frameworks. That's going to be the next series of talks we're going to have. We have September, we have October, we have November and December even. And we are open to ideas on what people want to hear about. We will be playing around a little bit more of a hands-on workshop with them, just some coding tutorials and more guides. So you can do API testing in them. You can do it in Playwright. We can do it in Cypress. We can do it in Karlin. But if other people have preferences, by all means, we are looking for them. You can say it now, you can say it later. But yeah, we will be open to suggestions on what frameworks people want to play with.
And so the idea is that we basically will use each of these frameworks and automate the same kind of test scenarios. So you can kind of see how you can do it within the different tools, kind of compare them and see what is easier. So this is going to be, I think, more focused on APIs. Is it,
Yep.
Dave?
Only
So we
yeah,
also
the
plan
focus
to
is
do
APIs.
So we
I
also
know
plan to do the
there's
same thing with the UI automation.
yep. So
So I did create a survey real quick, but it needs to be shared via email. So what I will do is I'll just send it to all of the members within Testaholics to kind of get some ideas of what kind of frameworks people are using or want to know more about, and then we can see if we can include those.
yeah.
And then the other thing, I don't know if you mentioned it, but the languages. So what languages are people using? Because we have like Python, we have TypeScript, we have JUnit. So
C#.
different tools allow, yeah, C#, different tools allow for different languages to be used. So if you want to see it done in a specific language, please let us know.
And then I always like to list resources. We Sven already listed Postman. GraphQL. If you really want to sit down and learn GraphQL, they have a very good tutorial on their actual site, is what I'll say. It is, like I said, once you start looking at it, it's definitely a little bit more complex than a REST call, but it's, if you have to, that's where I would start with learning by far. And then I always like to throw in, because APIs the numbers are pretty boring, and it's hard to remember what they are. So, httpcast.com. They have a cat image for every single status code, sort of relating to it. And same thing for the dogs one we were just on. You can use that just to play with the Swagger documentation on how it translates. It's nothing complex, but it's there. And then last off, join us. By all means, you folks are already here. I think you already have found us through the meetup, but we do have a spot on LinkedIn. We do have a Slack. You can ping us there. Ask questions there. By all means, that's what it's set up for. So that is my speed run of a quick API talk. So this way, like I said, setting the foundation, making sure when people jump into it, we have that covered, and the brief intro on Postman. So I don't know if there's other questions or other discussions. Yeah, Playwright is interesting. I'll say my last job literally like said, hey, we're gonna toss out all the Python code we've been writing for regular Selenium, and we want you to use Playwright. It's very nice, I will say. Playwright Playwright automatically does a lot of checks which should be standard, I feel, in a lot of UI testing. And it makes it a lot cleaner for code, but at the same time, its writing style is different enough that you can't just take what you regular write in Selenium code to Playwright. Because if you do that, you actually do a couple bad practices that Playwright's trying to avoid. But it's nice like that. Other questions? So I don't have to keep sitting here being awkward and whatnot.
Another question, just a comment. We should update probably this page since we now have a YouTube channel as well. So we are starting to record, and we have done that for the maybe last year or so. Starting to record our workshops and presentations, and we put them on YouTube so people can kind of take a look at it as well. We also are starting to create repos on GitHub, so I'll send that information over as well. We don't have one around API testing, but we do have one around Cypress, Karlin, test. So I'll provide that link as well. And then the last thing I want to mention is that what I mentioned before is so Newman. So Postman allows you to write like tests using JavaScript. I think there might be other languages as well. So you can kind of then do a test like I expect a 200 back. I expect the body of my response to be this, and other things. And you can kind of like, for instance, if you have to do authorization, you can kind of grab the token that you get back from the authorization call, and then you can kind of make subsequent calls using that token. So you can kind of create collections in Postman. It's really powerful. Insomnia does allow you to do the same. It's not as extensive as Postman. And the nice thing about Postman is that it has a plugin called Newman, which is free, which allows you to kind of put your tests within a CI/CD pipeline, so you can run them in an automated fashion. So not just manually through Postman. And then Postman also has I don't know which kind of IDEs you guys are using, but if you're using Visual Studio Code, Postman has a plugin, so you can write your Postman tests directly in Visual Studio Code. So that's pretty nice.
Neat. Not know that. Stuff for me to learn. I never knew that. Postman has grown so big from what I remember. Sort of crazy. I remember when it was just still a desktop web application. But yeah. That's all I got for the talk then.
All right. So next one we'll see. I'll send out the survey, and then we'll get things scheduled. We do have speakers for Catalan, Playwright, I think, and Cypress. I don't know. David, do you want to do your Pylenium again? Selenium
Yeah, I
with
can do the
Python?
Pylenium one again. I'll do the Pylenium one again.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then we'll focus.
I would do so. If no one says otherwise, I'm actually going to lean Cypress first, Pylenium second, and the reason because Pylenium is based off Cypress to a degree, so it makes it easy to see the relationship between the two.
Okay.
Just how it translates over, so it's like, oh, it's not that complicated.
So the warm weather, but hopefully we'll start up again now to the end of the year.
Yep.
So thanks for joining. Thanks, David, for doing the presentation introduction on API testing.
Yes, thank you very much. It was very helpful.
Welcome. Welcome. Oh man, the recording. That means I get to get my voice. I don't want to watch it. I definitely suffer from thinking my voice sounds so different on the recording when it plays back.